Let me call the meeting to order.
Okay, I'll read your statement. This meeting is being held as an electronic meeting pursuant to and in compliance with the City of Richmond Ordinance 2020-093 and the school board's resolution approved on April 20th, 2020. The notice of the meeting stated that the meeting would be a virtual meeting and would be live streamed on the school division's Facebook page. The link was provided for the public to view. The agenda for the meeting was also posted to board docs with the link. And after roll call, we will determine how many of the committee members are present. Let's see. So I'll do your roll call.
Okay.
Mr. Barlow. You're on mute, Mr. Barlow, but I see you're here.
Oh, I'm sorry, I'm here.
It's okay. Ms. Page
Here.
and Ms. Gibson.
Here.
You have a quorum, Ms. Page. The next item is to approve the minutes of the August 25th meeting. Those minutes were distributed and posted to board docs. I have not received any changes or edits.
Okay. So we need a motion to approve the minutes.
So moved.
Second.
Okay. Give me 1 minute. Mr. Barlow,
Yes.
Ms. Gibson,
Yes.
and Ms. Page.
Yes.
Thank you. The minutes have been approved. Mr. Parker, you want to get into the agenda?
Sure. So looks like, and I'm just going on Miss Dora's agenda. One of the first things we wanted to talk about for the first thing today, because we don't have anything to report. There are no new updates as far as work being completed. We're just in the process of completing all of the student activity fund information as of right now.
Okay.
So we'll have a report for you as soon as we finish with it and get it all reviewed. We'll be reporting that to the finance committee. But however, I know this week we kind of wanted to go, this meeting, we wanted to go over some of the follow-up stuff we had from the last meeting. One of that would be to review the student activity fund training. So we've been in conversation with finance, and we've come up with a pretty solid plan as far as just date-wise. There's no details as far as what the trainings may include just yet as far as that detail, but we plan to roll it out on by October the 30th. And I shared that I think I've shared that. What I'll do is share my screen though. I think if I share my screen, you can see the actual dates. So let me share my screen. Hold on. Yes, ma'am. Can you see that?
So I can't see it. Hold up.
There we go. You should be able to see it now. I know you're in the car.
Yeah, I'm working from my phone.
Okay. But I'll just go over it. I got a few tasks. It looks like it's approximately maybe 8 tasks or so, maybe a little bit fewer than that. But the first one, we had a few, there was some new training, some finance officers being trained. That was already done and completed by the 18th. And finance did that with Nishan and the new staff auditor, Justin. And then I reached out we thought it would be best to reach out to the Mr. Hughes. I've reached out to him to talk to him about, what's the best date to train the principals, to get the SAF training for the principals, as well as the finance officers, because we're going to try to do that. Although we want to do it in collaboration, but we think the best way to do it right now is to do it through the cluster meetings, because they meet, each one of the directors have a cluster meeting. And we think that would be the best way to kind of track them down without having to pull them apart for, a separate meeting to kind of, just on a separate day when they're all together to train them in those sessions.
Okay, so this document, your timeline, can, information that can be shared with the board as far as your, your next steps, as far as the training?
Yes. Let me get to
Mm.
stop share so I can see.
Because
Yes.
I lost the page.
Okay. Yeah, I just took it down.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. So we're more than happy to share this with the board. Again, it's just a rough outline of just when things are going to happen. As far as that, those are just completed dates. Again, where our plan is to have it all completed by October the 30th.
Mm-hmm.
To all of the finance officers district-wide, as well as all of the principals. All of that'll be done district-wide by October 30th. And we know we're going to have a lot of question and answers right now between finance and audit. We're working on getting the training all put together for the finance officers, as well as having the new manual updated and ready to roll at, right at the conclusion of the training. They sign off on a new manual, stating that they have a new manual so that everybody's kind of on the same page and they know, and we know that they've gotten a new manual that states kind of what we want to have happen on both fronts, from both finance perspective as well as the audit perspective.
Okay. So feedback from Mr. Barlow and Ms. Gibson. So with the audit work plan, when that's added to the board agenda, we can also include that information in the feedback.
Yes, yes. I think it's a part of the work plan. If you see it, I don't have it pulled up on.
Okay, so those dates are already included.
The dates aren't included, but there's a item in the work plan. There's a task or something in the work plan to specifically talk about SAF training or training of some sort.
Okay, you're breaking up.
I'm sorry.
Oh, it's okay.
I was saying that we have a line in the work plan for trainings. So we can just add a date for SAF trainings, a particular SAF training into the work plan itself already. So there's a budget line in there for hours dedicated to SAF, to some type of training.
Okay, so committee members, so your thoughts, this can be added to the first meeting in November? Because Milton, you have a date that's a completion date of October, correct?
Yes, ma'am. The October 30th.
Right. So would that be feasible as far as our next steps on the audit work plan and adding it to the board agenda? Scott, Kenya, any thoughts?
So we're gonna get that and it's gonna be uploaded so everybody can see it?
Of course, always.
Okay, yeah, that sounds great.
Now, when we say upload it so everybody can see it, what do we, as far as who? Public and all?
So documents, anything that we provide, any information we provide at the board meetings is always uploaded to board docs. So for public
Right.
consumption.
Yeah, that's fine.
Yes. So Angie,
Yes.
so we gonna let I'm sure Liz will let Linda and Cheryl know to add this to the agenda for the first meeting in November for approval.
I'm here too. I arrived a little bit ago.
Oh, okay.
Oh, you're yeah. I don't want to jump in the middle of a conversation. So
Okay.
thank you. Sorry for being tardy, and thanks to Don for stepping.
No problem. No, so I was just asking, we can we're talking to Angie, we can add the audit work plan to the next board agenda in November, the first meeting in November, because Milton is a completion date. They have outstanding item in October. So that's why we said it'd be feasible to add it to the first meeting in November to the agenda.
That sounds great. I would say that per the conversation that we had last finance committee meeting, I think we also need board approval to board discussion around sort of monitoring the audit work plan. The charter of this committee is finance, and obviously the audit work plan is audit. They're related, and my personal perspective would be that we expand the role of this committee to be finance and audit, so that Mr.
Right.
attend 2 separate meetings, but I think we'll need to have a board discussion about that and board approval. Do you agree with that, Ms. Page?
Yeah, that's fine. And then we're gonna talk about like the reporting out to the board, such as quarterly. We'll get quarterly updates or monthly updates. At the board's pleasure. I know in the past. Go ahead, Milton.
I know with the work plan, with the audit charter, that speaks to all of that, how we report out.
Okay.
On the basis on which we report out. So I know we have to kind of complete that and get it approved along with the work plan as well. So I know all of those documents, because I know we were supposed to kind of review that at some point here too, to make sure we had everything in it, because I know we need to update it for Ms. Adusco's, what her suggestion was to add in some more specifics around like 14 business days, and correct me if I'm wrong, Michelle, to update some more things, just about how we go about not only auditing per se, but the role of consultation. You're on mute. You're talking good.
I had given 2 bits of feedback. One was, I think though you clarified for me, one was, I think you had 14 days listed for a turnaround on something, which I thought maybe you'd want to give yourself broader flexibility, just in case something was more nuanced or in depth. But I think you had said it was for like an initial response, and you felt comfortable with the time. And the second, yes, was just around understanding the boundaries between the role of auditor, but then also being able to introduce or support around best practices, or things like you're supporting on now, helping with training or a manual, things like that.
Right.
Thank you.
So committee meeting, we can have clarification as far as expectations with those dates and everything, so that Milton, you can update it, update the the calendar, so when we present it to the board for approval, that information will be there. And if board members have any any objection, any concerns, we can make adjustments there.
Okay.
Now, will this, just a process question for the group, will this be presented to the board in November and then approved at the second meeting in November? Is that what we envision, or will this be presented to the board for feedback and then approved in subsequent meetings within the finance and audit committee, assuming we get approval there? Is there a preference?
So Angie, process, review, first meeting in November, and then if they have any feedback, provide that feedback by a certain date, and then approve at the second meeting in November?
If that's the way you would like to do it, typically the only thing you have 2 reads of is your policy. But if you do want to give them time, unless you want to get it out earlier and ask for feedback by that first meeting in November.
So what are your thoughts around that?
Mr. Parker, what is your what is your preference? I mean, I would say generally the board likes to see something and then approve the following meeting, just to give them time to digest. But I also want to be deferential to whatever timeline you're working under.
Right.
Right.
Understanding where we are in the time of the year, right? I would definitely assume that, you know, if we could get it out Octoberish and try to get it done before, you know, November 4th, at least the first view of it before then we would be good to kind of be on a roll. You know, by the time we get to November, we'll be on a roll, kind of moving into the first of the year at least. And that would kind of put us, you know, at least back on pace a little bit, because then we'll be looking at the rest of the, you know, rest of the school year, rest of the year from a fiscal standpoint.
Right.
What if we ask to have the work plan included as other informational items at the second meeting in October, and then we ask the board to read and digest and come prepared for questions on November 4th? You know, maybe board members will want to punt the decision to the second meeting in November, or maybe we can make a decision the first meeting in November, just sort of see how the discussion goes. What does the committee think about that? Ms.
I'm on board with, this is Kenya, I'm on board with that.
Sounds reasonable to me.
Yeah.
Now, is there any feedback that you all saw immediately? I mean, just looking at the work plan itself, anything that you all saw as as this unit that maybe we could tweak, or that you want to see tweaked, or anything like that?
I'm satisfied with it. I mean, because we, looked at it a lot, and I mean, I think it's the work that you have, set up, the risk assessments, how the criteria to determine what departments are being audited based on the risk assessments. So, I mean, it looks good, very detailed.
Okay.
Any other feedback from committee members on the audit work plan that we want to discuss? We can add it as a agenda item for October as well, to continue this discussion. But any other initial thoughts from Mr. Barlow and Ms. Gibson?
No, not at this time. I just want to make sure we upload it all to board docs for this meeting too.
Agreed.
Great.
Okay, so you want the, Ms. Gibson, what do you want for board docs?
The documents that you've given us to review so far, I mean, since we're discussing them at this meeting, I think we should have those uploaded to board docs for this meeting today.
Okay, all right.
Okay.
So, yeah.
So then, I mean, that's pretty much all I have. I know I have on here fraud, waste, and abuse hotline. I think we have that covered personally. I wanted to talk about it last meeting, but it was, I think between Mr. Dusko and I, we got that kind of covered up. We're on the right road because it's rolling. Where people are starting to contact both, they're starting to contact us about a lot of things, hotline related. We're working through those things as far as that goes right now. And we're working through that. And I think the external audit committee, I just don't want to put the cart before the horse. We just need to get something going audit committee wise first, so somebody can sign off on something from our standpoint, and then we'll start to talk about the actual audit committee and putting another audit committee in place that's separate of the finance committee right now.
So just to make sure that I understand, my understanding is that there are two things going on here. The first is that we'd like to get permission from our board to expand the role of this committee to, say, finance and audit.
Mm-hmm.
The second objective is, I believe, something that was approved last year, which was the desire for our board to have an external audit committee comprised of community members to advise our board. And so would love, Mr. Parker, your thoughts on, operationalizing the board's desire to bring in finance and accounting and audit professionals from the outside to aid in some of this work. And if you have any initial thoughts about assembling this committee and how this may work. And if this is, I think we talked about it a couple of months ago, but if you
Right.
think about it.
Actually, from that perspective, that gives me another realm, right? Because I think when you create this external audit committee, it gives you another breadth or another spectrum and platform to operate on. Because those community members, they'll see things very objectively in some cases. And they'll also give, perspective from, hey, why aren't you looking at, something, what all are you looking at? Basically really challenging the scope of what we look at. And then also holding the audit committee, holding us as auditors very accountable to all things school board related, even if it comes down to, in some instances, auditing certain things that are board related or governance related, right? And I think they will work well, because then we wouldn't have to be trying to push everything into one bubble like we are right now, kind of sort of with an hour. You would see a separate meeting. They would actually be responsible for signing off on the actual work plan itself versus the board. We would be more responsible in directly dealing with the audit committee versus going to dealing with the board itself per se. Now we would bring things back to the board, or the audit committee would bring things back to the board that we found, but we would be dealing more specifically with the audit committee because they understand the jargon, they understand all of those terms and things of that nature, if that makes sense.
But that needs to be, I think that needs to be clearly laid out in the scope of that committee, their
Right.
function.
Right. So we would need to, so it will start out with creating some type of audit committee charter, right? It's very similar to the actual internal audit charter itself. We would sit down with those, those members after that board's created or that committee's created, get that charter together so that everybody can understand what they actually do, what they're responsible for, right? So they're just not moving or operating. Excuse me. And then that would be approved by the board as a whole, as the collective board. And then we would move forward from there with the meetings and things of that nature.
Yeah, I think it certainly seems to make sense to put in place a charter when we've got an idea of what the folks will look like, but we definitely need to make sure that we outline, at least on a high level, what the scope of the responsibilities of that committee would look like. Because when we as a board delegate a authority or power or oversight to other organizations, we have to be very clear about what that looks like. And that's why even when we talk about our committee, there's talk about, or we have to figure out how to expand the scope to see whether audit oversight is appropriate here. And it sounds like we've got some level of consensus that it would be, but we'll see what that looks like on the board level as well.
Right.
Can I just say something? Working at Fairfax, that's how it's set up there as well. You would have your four board members that would, sit on that committee, as well as there were 2 citizen members. And the 2 citizen members, they did have background in audit or either accounting work. And they would advise us on certain things, as well as they would give their feedback and opinion. And they would also translate some of the audit jargon to the other committee members, as well as be willing to speak before the board. So there was, it was to where it got to the point where we would basically in that meeting discuss all things that are related to audit. So we would present our audit reports, we would present whatever we needed to discuss pertaining to audit. But, I'm with you, Mr. Barlow. It can be, the finance committee can be offset from the audit committee. It's just adding the other outside component, which is the citizen members.
Okay. Yeah. Well, I think it might be helpful to take a look at what their governance structure looks like, or at least if they have some sort of charter document or something along those lines from, you said, from Fairfax.
Correct.
If that may be something that we can, adopt.
Yeah. Because Scott, didn't we provide that information before when we were looking at before, when we first got started with this work, looking at surrounding localities, looking at best practices. I think Fairfax was a school district that we looked at. Do you remember?
Yeah, we definitely did that to some degree with the legal services work. I recall that. Liz, you may have more feedback about to what level we did that here. We did sort of check in. We did check in on a higher level to see what an audit department is structured like. I'm not so sure about how these relationships.
We did some work on finance calendars by district.
That's right.
Yeah.
And I think some of that included community participation, meetings, etc. There was some really good stuff that you guys covered.
Yeah.
So I might recommend that Mr. Parker, I think the original, my understanding of the original intention of this, and it's been some time, was that this would be a community committee of, more than two. I don't know. Sometimes our committees are like 60 people, but some reasonable number, 10-ish, 10 to 15, maybe less, of people from the community that the school board would approve to be a part of this, and sort of have be good to actually get the resolution that inspired this. But so I'm speaking from my own memory, so feel free to chime in, other committee members. But I think to Mr. Barlow and Ms. Page's point, we would welcome you to, and Ms. Holloway, to recommend a structure that makes sense. Understanding that there are community members, and maybe having an outside eye could be very helpful. But I think we can probably learn from some best practices from your experience, Ms. Holloway, or from other districts across the country. So my proposal would be that you all kind of spend some time thinking about that between the two of you, and come back to us at our finance committee meeting in October with a couple of options for us, and then we can present that to the board as part of your November appearance in front of the board. Does that work for committee members?
Yeah, there is one thing I'd like to clarify my opinion on, to the extent that you guys will have it. I do think, so Ms. Orr, you mentioned the idea of 10 or 15 people. I do think that there's a point at which organizing that number of folks and actually working effectively as a working group can be challenging when you have a large group. I think back on some fairly large initiatives that we've done. So if it is a matter of bringing some folks out to help advise us on this committee, or to create some separate committee with a few advisors, or I like the I think it was referred to as someone who can help translate some of these concepts to the board. That doesn't hurt either. So.
Yeah, no, it's a very good point.
Yeah. So, I think it will behoove us to receive guidance from the experts, from Milton and LaTanya, because we don't want to. Yes, we want to definitely operate at best practices, but also we hire them to do a job and value their input.
Yep. Okay, well then, does that work for everyone? That the meeting in October will make that kind of the meat of the meeting. Any additional feedback from our committee on the audit work plan, as well as thinking through helping think through Mr. Parker and Ms. Holloway's recommendations for an external audit committee, so that we can be prepared to recommend whatever you recommend to the board in November.
Sounds good.
Cool. Well, I don't know if we have much more. This is an efficient meeting. Thanks, Ms. Page, for stepping in. Appreciate it. And
no problem.
And thank you to Mr. Parker and Ms. Holloway for your excellent work to date. Very, very happy to have you both here. So
thank you.
Yes,
Well,
very excited.
Happy to be here. Thank you.
Thanks to our finance folks too.
That's right.
Yes.
Thank you, guys.
Yeah, thanks to the finance team, of course.
And myself. All right.
Absolutely.
And Matthew.
And Ms.
Okay.
All right. Bye, guys.
All right, y'all. Have a good one.
Bye.
All right. Bye-bye.